Yesterday, or maybe last week, you trusted a sticker. A little gold badge on a coffee bag, a wine label, a mattress ad. Award-winning. Your eyes caught it, and your brain relaxed. Because somewhere, someone official had already checked. Now let me ruin that for you. In 1949, the most official gold badge on Earth, the Nobel Prize in Medicine, went to a man whose great discovery was sliding a steel instrument into the front of a living human brain and sweeping it from side to side. Tens of thousands of people got that procedure. Children got it, war heroes got it, a president's sister got it, and the prize was never taken back. Not in 1975, not in the 2000s when families of the damaged formally asked, not today. It sits on the official record right now, no asterisk. Same font as penicillin. You think the lobotomy was a back alley horror done by monsters. That's the misconception. It was mainstream, celebrated, prize-winning medicine, and that is exactly what should scare you. I'm Kint. For this one, I'm strapping on the old-fashioned doctor's head mirror, the shiny disc on the forehead band. Goes lovely with the scarf. I've got no idea what it's actually for, and by the end of this video, you'll see I'm in respectable company. Start in London, 1935. The Second International Neurological Congress, which is the World Cup for brain scientists, minus the vuvuzelas. Two Yale researchers, John Fulton and Carlisle Jacobson, presented a study about a chimpanzee named Becky. Becky had a temper. Give her a puzzle, let her fail it, and she would rage. Screaming, throwing, rolling on the floor. Then the team removed her frontal lobes, the front third of the brain, the part that plans and worries and holds a grudge. The rage vanished. Becky failed the same puzzles and simply did not care. Fulton said it was as if she had joined a happiness cult. Then a hand went up in the audience. A 61-year-old Portuguese neurologist named Antonio Egas Moniz stood and asked the question that would change thousands of lives. If it calms a chimp, why not a human? Fulton later admitted the question startled him. It was not meant as a suggestion. Moniz took it as one. He went home to Lisbon and got to work. 3 months later, November 1935, the first psychosurgery on a living human being. Moniz could not do the cutting himself. His hands were wrecked with gout, so his colleague Almeida Lima held the instruments while Moniz directed. Think about that. The man redesigning human brains could not be trusted with his own fingers. I once put my shoulder out swatting a wasp and nobody let me redesign anything. The method was blunt. Drill 2 holes in the skull and inject pure alcohol into the frontal lobes to burn the tissue quiet. Later came a custom tool, the leucotom, a thin rod with a wire loop that popped out of the tip. Push it in, open the loop, rotate. Core the brain like an apple. Moniz operated on 20 patients from a Lisbon asylum and then published his results. His follow-up period was days, sometimes weeks. His grading system was himself. 7 cured, 7 improved, 6 unchanged, he announced, 0 worse. 20 for 20, nothing but good news, graded by the man holding the pencil. Would you accept those numbers from a used car dealer? The medical world accepted them at a sprint. Why? Because of what stood behind them. By the 1930s, the asylums of the world were warehouses. In America, the patient count was climbing toward 500,000. There were no antipsychotic drugs, no antidepressants. Treatment meant restraints, insulin comas, fever cabinets. Families were desperate. Doctors were desperate. Into that desperation walked a procedure that promised quiet. Not health, quiet. Hold on to that word, because it is the honest one in this story. Now enter the American. Walter Freeman, neurologist, goatee, cane, born showman. In 1936, he and the surgeon James Watts performed the first lobotomy in the United States. Freeman himself held no surgical certification, a detail he treated as decoration. And in 1946, he found a way to skip the operating room entirely. The transorbital lobotomy. No drill, no scalpel. You go in above the eyeball, through the paper-thin bone at the back of the eye socket. His first instrument came out of his own kitchen drawer, an ice pick. That is not a figure of speech. The actual family ice pick. Now I am in no position to judge a man's kitchen habits since I once opened a bean tin with a screwdriver, but nobody handed me a medical franchise for it. The new procedure took 10 minutes. Anesthesia? Electroshock. 2 jolts, and while the patient was out cold, a tap of a small mallet, a sweep of the pick, then the other eye. Freeman did them in offices. He did them in state hospitals by the corridor full, once 25 in a single day. He drove from state to state in a van that came to be known as the lobotomobile, demonstrating the technique to local doctors like a traveling salesman with one product. Even James Watts, the man who had done the first American lobotomy at his side, walked away in disgust. Not at brain surgery. at watching brain surgery become a 10-minute office visit. When your own co-inventor says you have cheapened the brain coring business, something has gone badly wrong. And while that van rolls toward the next county hospital, do me one small kindness. Hit like and subscribe. Takes 2 seconds, needs no mallet, and your brain stays exactly where you left it. Right. Back to the passenger list because you should know who ended up under that pick. Rosemary Kennedy. 23 years old. Sister of a future president. She had mood swings and a rebellious streak, and in 1941 her father arranged a lobotomy without telling her mother. Rosemary went in walking and talking. She came out unable to do either properly and spent the next 60-plus years hidden away in an institution. Howard Dully, 12 years old in 1960. His stepmother disliked his attitude, shopped him around to doctors who found nothing wrong with the boy, and eventually found Freeman. The procedure cost $200. Dully spent his adult life trying to work out what had been taken from him and told the whole story decades later in a memoir called My Lobotomy. And around 2,000 American veterans of the Second World War, men who came home shaking from what they had seen, were lobotomized in government hospitals. Quiet, remember? Not health. Quiet. Then came the crown. In 1949, the Nobel Committee awarded Moniz the prize in physiology or medicine, in the official words, for his discovery of the therapeutic value of leucotomy in certain psychoses. And here is the fact I most need you to sit with. The peak of the lobotomy came after the prize, not before it. Doctors who had hesitated stopped hesitating because the highest authority in world science had just signed the permission slip. The gold badge did not reward the damage already done. It multiplied it. Roughly 40,000 lobotomies in the United States. Around 17,000 in Britain, thousands more across Europe and Japan and South America. So who finally stood up and called the miracle barbaric? The Soviet Union. I will wait while you reread that. In 1950, the USSR, not exactly history's gentlest custodian of psychiatry, banned the lobotomy outright, its doctors arguing that it violated the principles of humanity and turned the sick into the simple. The Nobel-crowned miracle of the West was outlawed in Moscow while the lobotomobile was still doing loops of America. History does not hand out irony much heavier than that, and I will be honest with you about where I would have stood. If a man with a diploma and one of these head mirrors had offered me the pick in 1949, I would have asked if there was a queue and could I hold his coat while he worked. I faint at the dentist. I trust anyone in a white coat. I would have been no help at all, and statistically, neither would most people. So what finally stopped it? Not conscience. Competition. In 1954, a pill called chlorpromazine, sold in America as Thorazine, arrived in hospitals, the first antipsychotic drug. It did what the pick promised without the holes at a fraction of the cost, and if it went wrong, you could stop the pills. Nobody ever unswept a pick. Lobotomy numbers collapsed within a few years. Notice the shape of that ending. Medicine did not wake up one morning ashamed. It switched products. If the pill had arrived in 1964 instead, that is 10 more years of ice picks, and almost nobody involved would have behaved differently. Freeman kept going long after the fall. In 1967, a woman named Helen Mortensen came to him for her third lobotomy. He had done her first back in 1946. This time he tore a blood vessel in her brain, and she died 3 days later. His surgical privileges were revoked, and the most prolific lobotomist in history spent his final years driving that same van across the country, visiting former patients and collecting their Christmas cards, filing them away as evidence that he had helped people. He died in 1972, still certain. The reckoning, when it came, was quiet and academic. In 1986, the neuroscientist Elliot Wallenstein went back through the records for his book, Great and Desperate Cures, and confirmed what you have probably already guessed. The evidence was never there. Tiny samples, no control groups, follow-ups measured in days, and success defined more often than not as manageable. Even by Freeman's own generous accounting, roughly a third of patients improved. A third stayed the same, and a third came out worse. And worse covered everything from erased personalities to the grave. The science was thin from the very first day. The confidence never was. Which brings us back to the prize. Surely once all this was known, the committee quietly took it back. No. In the 2000s, relatives of lobotomy patients formally campaigned for the 1949 award to be revoked. The Nobel Foundation replied that its statutes contain no mechanism for revoking a prize. None. No Nobel in any category has ever been rescinded, and Moniz's page stands on the official website today. The committee's position is not quite, "we were right." It is, "we do not do takebacks." Those are two different things, and neither one should comfort you. Because here is the real lesson, and it is not that old doctors were monsters. Almost nobody in this story is a monster. Fulton was startled. Watts walked out. The families believed. The asylum doctors were staring at 500,000 warehoused patients with empty hands. The horror of the lobotomy is not evil. It is confidence. It is an institution stamping certainty onto a guess because everyone, top to bottom, needed the guess to be true. So look around your own century. Something in it wears a gold badge right now, is practiced wholesale at full confidence, and will one day be the subject of a video like this one, probably hosted by somebody better dressed than me. I cannot tell you which thing it is, neither can you. That is the point. The people of 1949 were not stupider than you are. They just trusted the sticker. So tomorrow, when your eyes catch that little gold badge on the coffee bag, go ahead and buy it. It is probably fine, but remember what the most trusted badge on earth once sat on, a kitchen ice pick. And remember that nobody ever took it back.